Star Wars toy collecting panel. We're the Georgia Alliance of Star Wars Collectors. I'm Narayan, one of the admins of the group. This is?
I'm Glen, one of the admins.
And
I'm Jason, one of the moderators.
And Jason and I host a podcast called Smuggler's Galaxy. You can find us on all your great podcast stuff.
So our group is pretty active on Facebook. Feel free to join us. We have a table upstairs that we're doing actually a charity raffle this weekend at our table to benefits Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. That's one of our missions, is to do some service activities for the community. So please stop by our table, take a look. There's also some free swag for you guys up there. Actually, at the end of this panel, we have some free swag for anybody who wants some Goonie Bird, kind of the old Kenner symbol, themed buttons that you guys can get from us. So one of us has those, right?
Yeah, I got it.
So you can pick that up from us at the end of the panel. So today we're just going to talk about all aspects of vintage Star Wars collecting, kind of a basic overview of Star Wars collecting. And we want to just make this interactive as much as possible, so feel free to ask questions at any time. It doesn't feel like we have to cover everything in super detail, but how many of you is everyone in here a Star Wars collector, or modern as well as vintage? Mostly modern, or both? Okay. Yeah, we're mainly going to do with vintage today, but all of us pretty much have collected vintage and modern stuff. So anywhere you look, there's Star Wars collectibles nowadays. So and again, we're going to focus on the toys for the most part, but as you know, Star Wars is kind of pervasive in pop culture now. So anything you want, you'll probably be able to find something that's Star Wars related.
Right.
All right,
here we go. Basically, everything started in 1977 when the movies were released. And what happened was, because George Lucas was being very close to the vest with all of his designs, when he ended up going with Kenner, they only had 6 months to produce the toys. So they came up with what they call the early bird certificate. That way that come Christmas morning, you could at least have something that was Star Wars related underneath the tree. And then you mailed it off, and in 6 to 8 weeks, you had your toys. So this is just sort of, so that's the early bird certificate. And then they also had the early bird set on a display stand.
That's the figures that basically, when you redeemed the certificate, they sent you for the first figures.
Right, which was Luke, Luke, Leia, R2, and Chewie. Sorry, it's been 2 years since I've given this panel, so I'm a little rusty. I'm sorry.
And when you got the figures, you also got actually a second offer for a stand that would basically hold the first 12 figures. So that's what's shown there on that image as well. So, does anybody own one of these in their collection? These are things that go on for big money now, it seems like. So both the early bird certificate, the kit, as well as the stands. But I know there's been a few actually I've seen with dealers, mainly the stand. I don't think I've even seen any early bird kits out there, but
I asked for it. I got Micronauts and the Super Joe Commander.
The first 21 were the first wave that was introduced, which is basically the Star Wars wave and a little bit of the Empire Strikes Back. They do kind of release when you got the first 12, then you got the first 21, and then you got, what's the next kind of jump?
31,
and then it goes all the way up to like 92. And that's sort of like, the first 21 back is sort of, you got a 12 back card, and you got a 21 back card, and you got a 32 back card. It all depends on, that's how they separate the cards.
Who knows the only character that is on a Star Wars card that didn't appear in Star Wars?
Boba Fett?
Yep, that's right. He's the 21st figure, and he actually, he's one of my focus characters that I collect, and they actually, one of the most infamous kind of toys out there, or famous toys out there, one of the most kind of desired ones, is something called the rocket firing Boba Fett.
I do have, we got that in a couple of slides.
So yeah, one of the cool things is they did a Fett offer mail away as part of the the Star Wars cards to get those, and that was one of the most popular ones they ever had.
This is the blue Snaggletooth. This is a sort of it's a lore in the Star Wars community. Basically, what happened was Lucasfilm sent Kenner a bunch of slides, a bunch of pictures, and they saw the picture basically of just the head of blue Snaggletooth. And when they made it, they made him with blue, blue suit and a disco suit, and then disco boots. And then when George Lucas saw it, he goes, "You got the figure all wrong." So that's where we get the smaller one with the red suit and the feet showing up. But this figure was only released in very limited quantities. It was released in a Sears Cantina set, and that was the only place you were ever get it. So if you ever see a carded blue Snaggletooth, it's fake. Don't buy it. That was never on a card. He was just in a baggie that was in a play set. And these I've seen go. I bought my first one 4 years ago for about $120, and they're going for $300 to $400 right now. Easy. So we'll get to prices in a minute, but prices are just skyrocketed. Vinyl Cape Jawa, that's another kind of lore. This one, basically what happened was with families, it was a cost preventative measure. Making the vinyl cape was too expensive, so they changed it to cloth, and they thought that they weren't going to get it. Lucas thought that they weren't, or Kenner thought they weren't going to get as good a value, so they changed it to cloth. And so then you've got a vinyl cape Jawa that's going for easily $1,600 loose. And here is Narayan. I'm going to let you talk about this one.
All right, so now we got to the rocket-firing Boba Fett, which seems to be commanding huge amounts of money in auctions nowadays. And last I looked, they may have approached what, 50, 60,000?
You could almost buy a house for what?
Yeah. So there's different versions of this. All of these are prototypes. These were never actually released in mailers sent to anyone's home. So anyone that said they actually got one or played with these when they were a kid, well, that's bad memories. So these are only basically an internal Kenner thing that most of the prototypes actually are unpainted. And there's a couple different versions of these things, and they call them based on that rocket firing slot in the back, whether it's shaped like an L, kind of like a reverse L, or a J slot. So the painted versions are actually pretty rare as well. So, and until recently, they never found kind of a full production version until I think a couple mailers actually showed up from a Kenner employee maybe about a year or two ago that were still in a baggie. And but other than that, that's been the only ones that have actually showed up, and that was probably the closest step to production. But none ever actually went out. And does anyone know the story why this never became a reality? Yeah, so it was actually kind of a sad story. There was a Cylon Raider or Battlestar Galactica toy, basically.
You know where it was? Where it happened?
It happened in Atlanta.
In Decatur.
It actually, unfortunately, a child actually shot one of the firing missiles from one of these Battlestar Galactica toys into their mouth, and actually choked and died from this thing being lodged in their lungs. And so, probably within, I think, 3 to 4 months before the rocket firing Boba Fett was released, Kenner decided to scrap the whole project in terms of having a rocket firing mechanism, and so it was a fixed rocket that actually got released into the mailers and sent to the folks. So,
double telescoping lightsabers. This is another thing that they changed mid-production. Luke is pretty much standard when you see one. They did make a Vader and a Ben Kenobi. A Luke will run you, basically what a double telescoping saber is when you pull the filament or the little knob, it'll extend, which makes it a double telescoping. So as you can tell with the Ben, the one on the left is a regular one, but then the one on the right would be a double telescoping where you get that extends.
So one extension from the arm, and then the tip extends even further. So the Luke actually was the only one that was generally available, and that was in some of the early bird kits. But the Ben and Darth Vader are exceedingly rare, probably the rarest production figures from Kenner. And they're probably a number less than 50, if even that. And a lot of them have very fragile sabers, so they get broken. And there's obviously been reproductions made of these, so make sure if you're ever in the market to buy one of these things, The Luke probably runs maybe 1,000 to 2,000 in good condition. The Vaders and the Kenobis are 10,000 to 20,000 plus. The Kenobis are the rarest. I think they're approaching 30,000 now. But it's difficult to find, and definitely have them verified if you're going to spend that kind of money to get a double telescoping figure.
The Loose 92 run, that's sort of a paramount or a watershed moment in a lot of collectors' collections. A lot of collectors collecting this world, you know, is to get a Loose 92 run. We actually had a guy that just completed it today. He just did it today, got a Yakface.
Technically, it's the 93 run for him, right? Because the Yakface is the 93rd figure. So, yeah.
But yeah.
We say 92 because the last card back for Kenner said collect all 92. So,
Narayan's a really stickler for details, but that's what makes him great. So, but yeah, that's sort of a watershed moment in every collector's collection, I guess is what I'm saying. And yeah, we've got a slide to describe what it's going to cost to get to 92, but we'll get to that in a minute.
I think for most of us, when we start, you know, as kids, we're not really collectors. We obviously played with the toys, but probably most of us started truly collecting maybe in the 90s when the whole Star Wars line got rebooted and put back into stores. And I think for a lot of us, one of the main things to do was go back and complete that vintage run. Maybe a lot of these were not in stores, especially the later figures that came out. So this is kind of the main quest for nearly every Star Wars collector when they first start out going back to collecting the vintage stuff.
Right. Mine was just to collect what I had as a kid, and a year later it was, I got to get them all. And this is just how people normally display a Loose 92 run. Up top.
Yeah, this is one of our member collections, and you can see he's actually got some nice pieces there. There's an early bird kit, an early bird envelope certificate there. But yeah, it makes for a great display to have all the figures.
And this is the original 12-back run. Once people normally do make their 92 run, this is sort of the next thing they want to accomplish, is to do a 12-back run, which basically when you turn it over, the card just has the original 12 figures on it. And then you do a 12-back run of all of them. They're pretty hard to find. They're not extremely rare, but they're hard to find. And when you do find one in good condition, there's a lot.
And expensive.
Very, very expensive. Focus collecting. We also, once you do make your 92 run, you do find a focus. We both do Fett. I collect Wampas. This is actually some of my Wampa collection. But I do Wampas, I do Fett, I do collect Rebels, the new Rebels cartoon. But yeah, a lot of collectors do focus collecting, and they'll, you know, buy every figure they can. Whenever they find it, they pick it up and run with it. And this is just a couple of samples of focus collecting.
Yeah, and let's face it, it's impossible to collect everything in Star Wars nowadays. I mean, it was possible maybe at one time to be a completist, but focus collecting allows you to kind of have a collection that kind of is a slice of everything, kind of representing, you know, your character. So you can collect modern, vintage, and other collectibles besides toys that kind of deal with your character. So it's a nice way to kind of keep collecting even after you've just done the loose run, and maybe, you know, carded figures might be too expensive to collect. So it's a nice way to kind of keep collecting and keep it interesting.
And this is actually
This is actually my collection.
Well, the card stuff is his. And
this is an
stuff on the other
old
side
picture,
is
but
mine.
yeah, I'm a Boba Fett focus collector. I also collect Luke, Jedi, and Yoda figures, but that wall has grown and my wallet's shrunk since then. So yeah, so that's some carded Boba Fetts that I've collected over the years.
And that's micro collection. This is the micro collection over the past 2-3 years have kind of really come to the forefront. And there again, it's one of those where when you're done collecting your 92 or your Focus or your card backs, people are like, where to go next? And it's the micro collection. It came out in the mid, like 82, and the problem was, what the issue was it was very expensive for the time. And people, you know, parents had just spent all this money on buying full-size figures. Why would they buy little figures? And so it was a terrible failure. Kenner lost millions. There was stuff in production, stuff in the works that never got to it. And it's just some incredible, I think some of the best stuff that was ever put out for the vintage line was this micro stuff, because it's just, the playability on it is amazing.
Probably a line ahead of its time.
It was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, and it's had some of the most amazing play features and some of the most realistic play sets that were ever made for by Kenner. I mean, that's great features like the Beskar the freeze chamber is one of the most incredible.
The freeze chamber, you actually could put a Han Solo down, turn a knob, and come back up, and it's haunted carbonite.
So yeah.
And like with the Death Star, there's that door behind Luke and Leia. That thing will swing open, and so it'll swing closed. So you can leave it open and hit a button. So it's some of the best features I've ever seen on Star Wars.
Yeah, unfortunately, it just did not sell well in stores. So other than those sets that got released for Hoth and Bespin, there were planned sets for like Dagobah and like Return of the Jedi sets, but they never ever got released.
Right. And this is some of they also made some ships that were, there again, incredible and ahead of their time, because you pushed a button and they fell apart. Which...
Yeah, the Micro Collection Falcon actually is one of the great versions of the Millennium Falcon, because it's actually to scale. Well, the best to scale of all toys with the figures that are inside.
Yeah, and the only thing that's ever really done to scale with the Falcon are those big, huge Legacy Falcons that you've seen at Toys R Us back in the 90s. That was done to scale. If you had a 3 3/4 figure, it should fit. Or that was what their plan was to make it to scale. And then underneath is the die-cast ships, which is yet another fun little run. And it's fairly easy to put together, except for the TIE Bomber, which they only made, I heard, 10,000 of. And that's the one all the way to the right. And that took me probably like 2 years to find. But there, yet again, another line that just had a ton of playability in it. Repro weapons, that's something we, it's a touchy subject, but we don't agree with repro weapons in the Star Wars world. We don't agree with bleaching. We don't agree with repro stickers, just because it's bad for the next generation. We're trying to keep it, to keep everything whole for the next generation. Because you don't want somebody 5 years down the road buying a repro piece. It's getting harder and harder to find, to tell them apart. You could drop like a repro weapon versus a real weapon, and if they sound different. The real weapons, some of them, they float. Not some of them, but they float, but now they're starting to make the repro ones that float. So they're getting better and better. Just be careful, because if it looks off, it's probably off.
Yeah, and I know some other toy communities, they have different opinions on reproductions and so forth. I think generally in the Star Wars community, it's again not, it's very discouraged to essentially forbidden, to be selling reproduction items in most of these Star Wars groups nowadays. So.
This is a fun one. How are the movies? And now I didn't put The Mandalorian on here, because actually, truthfully, when the movies came back out, stuff started to skyrocket. But as soon as Ahsoka strike those blades on The Mandalorian in December, prices have gone through the roof. Ahsoka went from, something very few people cared about to being the best thing in the Star Wars world. So her stuff is, what was it? A couple hundred, maybe $50 for an Ahsoka. Now it's several thousand.
Ashoka Tano is one of the hottest characters right now. So if you see anything Ashoka on the floor, get it. So, and of course, Boba Fett reappearing. He was always popular to begin with.
We call it the Boba Fett tax, and now we're starting to call it the Ahsoka tax, because you could buy something, you could have a Luke figure, and you could have a Boba Fett figure, and that Boba Fett figure is going to be 2 to 3 times the value of that Luke figure, just because it's Boba Fett.
And it's not any rarer. They're produced in the same amounts, but it's just a more desirable character for people just like the look of that character, so it's a supply and demand, really.
Jason, this is yours.
Yeah. So I'm primarily a modern collector, but I do have some of the vintage stuff, and I was just kind of curious, how much would it cost to finish a collection today? Or if you were going to start from scratch, how much is it going to cost to start buying these pieces? And there's a big scale between $15 to close to $700 for some of these figures. And I just went on eBay and checked the completed sales for the past 3 months. I made a list of all 93 figures and captured the highest price on eBay, considering that if it's high, it's probably all legit, it's probably clean, it's probably got all its accessories and stuff like that. So I have a sample in here. And General Maydean was $15. Han Solo in a trench coat was about $20. Boba Fett with his weapon was about $75. Princess Leia is $100, $105, somewhere in there. Leia with her poncho was $200. Amon was $268. Luke with his poncho was $291. You're getting up there close to $300.
I don't know. That's what is it?
Yeah, that's about, EV99 was about $360. Yakface, $510. And then pop-up R2D2 in the last 17, he was $643. So you can just see the span there based on the availability of these figures. The last 17, which is pretty much the second half over there, all those figures are just so much more expensive. So before you go to the, you can see it. How much?
Here.
Yeah. So if you're going to start from scratch, you're going to spend close to $6,400 to get every single 93 figures. That's not including your Jawa with the vinyl cape, which is an extra $3,000. Your blue Snaggletooth, which is going to be close to $400, $300, depending on which auction you find. That's not including Nice Noodles and Max Rebo, that whole band. So just the carded 92, if you get them loose with their accessories, that's how much you're going to spend.
And what's funny about the last 17, that was stuff that was in the, when they were released, they were in the discount bins. So they were selling for pennies on the dollar. Now we're selling them for tens on, they're way much more expensive than they ever were.
Does anybody know the reason why Yakface is kind of a difficult figure to get? That's right, it was sold in what?
Was he sold in the UK but not available here?
It was actually only sold in Australia. Yes, so he was actually interestingly only sold on a French language card in Australia for whatever reason. But he was never sold stateside in the United States. He was sold on a tri-logo card in Europe as well. So that may be, true, he was sold in the UK. But yeah, that's why he's tougher to get for most collectors here. Now in Europe, it's the opposite. They had a hard time getting like the vinyl tape Jawa, which is a little more common, in the United States. Not common figure at all, but a little easier to get for them than Yakface. And it's funny, I was talking to some Australian collectors. They all have like a Yakface in their collection. They're like, that's not even a rare figure for us, So, but yeah, probably $400 or $500 figure, if we're trying to buy it here. So.
Do y'all have any questions?
Hi.
No, just speak up. I'm sorry. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
With regard to repro figures and accessories and so forth, how do you feel about the makers that are producing figures that Kenner never produced but are in the same style as the Kenner figures?
That's your question, Narayan.
Yeah, so I don't refer to those as reproduction. I would call those custom figures. And so, I'm a huge collector of custom figures, especially ones that are vintage style. So I have no problem with that at all. In fact, I think one of the big avenues forward for Hasbro is this retro line. And I'm a little, it's fine that they're making kind of another version of the old ones, but I'd much rather see new characters made in the vintage style, which I think they're doing there's a Mandalorian line that's going to be coming out soon. And they've released a few. I think there was Tarkin and a Luke in a snowspeeder outfit, but it would be great to see things like, Princess Leia in her Huttslayer outfit, the Ewok Leia, Han Solo as Stormtrooper. I mean, these are easy things they could do. It'd be great to see some of those in the vintage style. So, but yeah, I don't consider those reproductions. I consider those custom made figures. So, yeah, the real idea with reproductions is what's the intention? Are you trying to fool somebody into thinking it's a vintage item? It wouldn't be as big of a problem if people were forward with, this is definitely a reproduction item, but they're making them to look like as close to the real thing as possible. And when vintage weapons themselves go for $50 to $100 sometimes, that's the problem. If someone's making a reproduction weapon and saying it's a vintage weapon. So.
Right. We don't have a problem if somebody wants to copy a layer blaster and do it in hot pink. Or it's obvious, you can see it, then you can tell it's a repro. But when they're trying to fool people, that's when there's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, look, that R2-D2 with the pop-up saber, the one thing that really makes that figure expensive is that pop-up lightsaber. And there are people making reproductions of that lightsaber. So, it's that lightsaber alone probably goes for $200-300 if you just had to find it, because a lot of them are missing it. It's a small part. So, yeah, it really devalues the whole collection, the collecting hobby. Reproductions. That's what most Star Wars collectors feel. So.
Yeah.
Are people able to get the reproductions or able to the waffling? Imitate that as a seal? Is that still like a definite seal? Showing that it's,
So you're talking about reproduction carded figures?
Yeah, reproduction carded figures.
Yeah, unfortunately there are some people that have been able to copy the waffle seal. What he's talking about is on the original carded figures, it's actually kind of like a heat seal around the figure that attaches to the actual paper of the card back. And one of the few ways you can tell whether something was a resealed card or, a reproduction card was, they couldn't mimic that little waffle pattern of the seal. But some people found ways to kind of mimic that too nowadays. It's not common, but I've certainly seen it. But yeah, though for the most part, carded figures, it's very difficult. It's usually pretty obvious that the card is reproduction because of the print, and you can usually look at it, and it just has a different look to the card. In most cases, the print quality is going to be a little different. So, but yeah, I mean, there's great technology out there, and somebody that's where there's a will, there's a way, unfortunately. So.
They're definitely opposed to it. I'm not trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's much less common than the weapon stuff, I would say. And there are a few people that are making reproduction, like entire figures now, out of plastic and injection molding. But the most common is reproduction weapons, because that's what gets lost. So. Any other questions for us? Yeah.
I'm just curious, this is something I'm looking into. If you were going to go about getting a vinyl tape Jawa, or if you could open it up to any of these super rare figures, what would be your advice to trying to make sure you don't end up with a very close replica? I guess, or what would be your advice?
Do your research, ask experts. There's definitely some tells in a genuine vinyl cape Jawa. There's actually like a little, what do they call it? It's like almost a little hashtag. Like,
Yeah, there's a zip or a waffle. They call it a waffle pattern.
yeah, there's a little pattern actually that's on the cape that you look for, and it actually makes a characteristic sound when you kind of scratch it. But I mean, if you're gonna spend $1,000 plus on a figure, I mean, make sure it's from a reputable seller. Get it verified by somebody who's familiar with what the vinyl cape Jawa should look like. You could get it graded, or ask for it to get graded, so that way it's authenticated by a grading company that it's genuine.
That's probably the easiest way, but it's going to be the most expensive because you're basically doubling the price of the figure.
Well, that was what I was kind of wondering, like where would be the best place to even shop for one? And,
Well, I'm sure there's.
like Facebook groups, like Imperial Commissary, or where do you think would be the best place to go about finding? shooting a real one?
I mean, nowadays, probably the Facebook group.
Yeah,
The
the
Facebook
Facebook-
groups right now are really where the community, the collecting community is shopping. You know, certainly you can try on eBay too, but you know, it's moved kind of from the old forum threads to Facebook now, I think. I mean, you could try to potentially still find one in the wild. I'm not sure that's possible anymore, to find a vinyl Cape Jawa, but you know, again, it is possible, but then you got to be verifying it yourself, you know, in the middle of a busy toy show or something, and it's hard to really do it.
I got Narayan on
Good
speed dial.
example, so, yeah.
So if I find one, message you.
Yeah. Or some, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are expensive figures, so it really is on you to do your research, know what you're buying, so.
And trust the seller. I mean, that's what it really boils down to, is buy it from a trusted seller. Anybody else? Awesome. Just real quick, we are giving away, raffling off a Kim Simmons print that was awesomely framed. We're raffling that off for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. It's $5 a ticket. If you guys are interested, I've got some tickets with me, or you can come up to our club table. We're going to draw it probably tonight. That way you can pick it up and take it home with you. We are also going to do a room sale tonight. I'm not sure. I was told it was going to be in room G, but we're hearing we may have too many people, so it may end up being in the lobby. Just kind of keep your eyes open. That's going to happen about 7 o'clock tonight. Just bring a tub if you got stuff. Let's make some sales. Do some trading. So thanks.
We'll take a photo
Yeah.
and say hi.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for
Thanks
coming,
for
guys.
attending, and actually, do we have some buttons for that?
Yeah, we got some.
So we actually have a few, if you guys went to our table upstairs, you probably noticed we have a bottle cap giveaway we're doing all weekend. We've got a very limited amount of a special Toylanta cap. There's only like 6 of them in here. So the first 6 people up there. But we also have these nice Goody Bird buttons. They actually say, if you know the old Kenner mottos, it's Kenner, it's fun. So this is, it's quarantine, it's fun, and the Goody Bird has a little mask on him. So special buttons, so for everyone that's attending here. So feel free to pick one of those up. Thank you for coming, appreciate it. And yeah, stop by our table, join our Facebook group. Very active group. We talk about collecting all the time. So if you liked our panel, you'll like the group. Thanks everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.